Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, Signal Up Productions. In today's video we're going to talk a little bit about JMRI operations and how it can manage your cars on your layout and generate switch lists for you. But before we get into that, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you gave me a subscribe. Click the bell notification so you can be updated on anytime I upload a new video to the channel. If you like this video and if it was helpful for you, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and maybe share it on your social media groups and send it to your friends if you think it might help them too. So we're going to get right into it on this video of how to use the basics of JMRI operations. Alright, so if you're not already familiar with JMRI, a little overview is it's a free software download developed by volunteers. A lot of really smart people have contributed over the years to make the software better and to do more things. JMRI, that stands for Java Model Railroad Interface. And this particular software, you can download it for Mac operating systems, Linux, and Windows. Now I'm using a Windows 10 laptop. You can install software according to your operating system, however you would normally do that. So for me, I would go to jmri.org. You could Google that. If you don't have a way to browse the internet, you could just Google JMRI and it should point you there. And you're going to look for the latest production release, which is right here, Java or JMRI 5.2. You would download it for your particular operating system with the link right there. Then you would install it the normal way you install software on your computer. So once you have that installed, the icon should populate on your desktop. And you've got two different icons because JMRI does a lot of different things. Decoder Pro is what most people use to program their DCC decoders on their locomotives. So we're not using that today in this video. Instead, we're using Panel Pro. So we're going to open that. We're going to click on that icon, Open Panel Pro. And by default, the operations choice is not on the toolbar. So what we have to do, we have to go find it under Tools, down here to Operations, and then over to Settings. I like to put a link to it right here, Options, Add Operations Menu to Main Menu. I like to have that there. It just makes it easier to find when it's right on the front. So I'm going to save that, and then if I restart JMRI, then I should have the operations choice at the top of the menu, which it is right there. So let's just do some basic setup of some of the options. We're going to name our railroad the UPSF joint line. That's the name of our group's HO scale layout down here at my friend Lee's house. We can decide if trains on our main line primarily travel in a north-south or an east-west configuration. On the UPSF, we actually run both directions. So we'll leave that as it is. We could give all that. This really isn't important. It's when you really want to specify how the software does certain things. But for just basic car management, a lot of this we can just leave in default. You could go ahead and do your maximum train length. This is in scale feet, so 1,000 scale feet or 1,500. You know, ours never get more than 2,000 scale feet long. The max number of locomotives per train, we don't have the system assign locomotives to our trains, although you can. You can tell the software to decide which locomotives get assigned to which trains. But in our group, everybody likes to bring their own engine, so we just leave that alone. Let's see, there's nothing else on the settings page that we need to change, so we're just going to save that. That's fine. And then, yes, I want to change the name of the railroad. So we saved it. We can close that window now. So what JMRI operations does is you input the information about your locations, your cars. We're not using locomotives. Then we have to designate some routes that go between the different locations. and then we can assign trains to use those routes. Let's just do a really basic set of information here and see what that does for our system. So for us, we're going to borrow some of the industries that are on the current UPSF layout that I'm sure you've probably seen in my other videos. Let's make up a location called Frisco. Frisco is the name of one of our yards on the layout, and we're going to add that location. It is on the main line that travels east and west. There's all the default cars. We'll just leave that. That's fine. We're going to add a spur track. In Frisco, there's a spur track called Hamilton Hardware. Hamilton Hardware. And it's about 160 feet long, which is about the length of 3 40-foot box cars and a little leftover. So 160 feet. We're going to add that spur track. And we can also designate exactly what kind of car can be delivered or picked up from that spur. We can also tell the system which direction the train has to be going on the main line in order to service that spur from a trailing point switch. That's a normal switch that you would, how you would switch cars. It's a trailing point switch because the engine would pull past the switch and then be able to back onto the spur by going in that direction. And so in this particular scenario, this spur is serviced by trains that travel in the east direction. And we're going to clear all of that because not everything goes there. In fact, the only thing that goes to Hamilton Hardware is boxcars. So we'll just check the boxcar checkbox. For simple starters, we're not going to edit any of these details. So we are going to save the spur track. And then we'll close that. And that's all we're going to do at Frisco for right now. So we're going to save location. And we're going to close that. So we have the spur location. Now let's, for some reason that was already here, so I'm just going to go ahead and add a new location. We're going to call it Argentine Yard. That's the main yard that is on our layout here. We're going to add that location. And then it serves trains that goes both east and west. And in that yard, we're going to have a yard track. But look here. We've got several different choices that we can determine what this track is. If this were a staging yard, and we could set that by changing the radio button to staging only, you can either have a staging yard or you can have everything else. But you can't have a staging yard that is everything else. Staging is intended to be somewhere generally hidden or to represent the rest of the world. So at Argentine Yard, this is going to be just a yard. I could go into how you could use the location to force the cars to do a certain thing, but that's a little too complicated. What I'm saying is, don't get locked into absolutes. JMRI can be configured in whatever way you want it to be. Try and think outside of the box. Figure out how choosing to make your yard tracks a spur in the system, what that might do for how your trains are built and how they are received and how they are classified. Or if you want certain blocks of cars to be attached to certain trains specifically in a certain way, you might choose that that choice. But for today's example, we're just going to make a yard track. We're going to just call it track 1. And generically, we'll just say it's 300 feet. It's actually closer to 1,600 feet on the layout here, but it's we're just going to say for this test 300 feet. We're going to add the yard track. And the yard track, yeah, I can get all of them. But for this particular example, let's see, we're going to clear all. We're going to say we're going to get box cars there. And we're going to get, I don't know, flat car there. Okay, super. Oh, you know what? And grain cars too. Where's the grain car? Why not? For good measure. We can have fun with this. There's not going to hurt nothing. Where is the grain? Hopper grain. Okay. And we're going to save that. Okay. So that's the yard. I'm going to save the location. And now we're going to add one more location. And we're going to call this Flora. And we're going to add location. And it is serviced by trains that go westbound. Clear all. And we're going to say there's a grain elevator there, so they're going to get grain cars. Let's see, we're going to save. And we're going to say that flat car can go here as well. Flat car. So in Flora, we're going to say there's a spur for the grain elevator. So grain elevator. And it's long enough for probably like one car. So we'll just say it's 70 feet. That should cover most grain hoppers. And it's served in the west direction. And it only gets the grain hoppers. So we don't want flat cars to go there. The rest of that we'll leave the way it is. We're going to save that track. Close that window. And now for the flat car, that we'll say that industry is transload. Transload is what they used to call team tracks. Nowadays it's transload. Transload. I cannot type today. Okay, transload. And it's also about 70 feet long, about long enough for one car. Add the track. And it only gets the flat car. Okay, we're going to save that. Close that. We're going to save the location now that we're done messing with that. So we have a yard, Argentine. We have two towns, Flora and Frisco. And we have three different industries. Two of them are at Flora, and one of them is Frisco. And the Frisco is serviced by trains going in the east direction, and Flora is serviced by trains going in the west direction. So we're going to make two different jobs. Two different jobs in our fictitious layout here. We're going to have a local that goes east from Argentine. So we're going to call that the east local. East local. Add the route. And the location it starts at is Argentine. And because the layout is a circle, we're just going to say it comes right back to Argentine. So it goes in a big circle. And it leaves east. But along the way, we want it to stop in Frisco. Because it's the spur in Frisco gets serviced by the eastbound train. So add that location. And we can sort this. Make my window bigger there so we can see it. We can move that up. And see, now we've got it. We leave Argentine, we go to Frisco, we come back to Argentine. When we leave, yes, we're going to make pickups, but when we're leaving, we're not setting out in Argentine. When we get to Frisco, we're going to do pickups and we're going to do set outs. Then when we get to Argentine on our way back, we're not going to make pickups when we return, but we are going to make set outs. The max train length, 2,000 feet. We could edit that individually so that as the train moves along its route, it can get longer or shorter. But we don't need to do that for this test. So we have that route set up. So we're going to save the route. We can X that out. We'll go, see there's our east local. Now we're going to make a west local. We're going to call that west local. Now this is the route. This isn't the train. Multiple trains can use the same route. So you can make one route that goes east out of the yard, one route that goes west out of the yard, and have several different trains using the same routes. So that's why that's fine. I should have called that west local. I got to talking. I can edit that later. In fact, I can edit that now. Local. Okay, save. And it departs Argentine Yard location, but it's going to depart in the west direction. Along the way, it stops at Flora and their location, And that's now west also. And then we're going to return to Argentine. And it's west. Same thing earlier. We're going to do pickups. We're not doing setouts when we leave. We can do both at Flora, and then not doing pickups, and yes, doing setouts when we get back. We don't need to adjust that default train length there, so we're going to save that. If we wanted to make a comment, something short that will help us remind us what this route is used for, we could do that here in the comment field, but we don't need to do that today. So now we've got 2 routes, and it tells us right here those details. And it says right here the status is orphan. That's because we've got the route established, but no trains are currently using that route. So let's go fix that. Let's go to trains. And now we're going to make our trains. We're going to add a train. And this train, let's see, on the UPSF, we're going to say that the local goes to Frisco is LFR. LFR 23. I don't know. We're just making it up. We could have a departure time if we were doing a fast clock maybe. We're going to add train. And now we're going to select which route the Frisco local works. And it was the one that used the east route, because the spur in Frisco uses an eastbound train. So there's east. And we could individually tell it not to use certain. This is if you had lots of different stops along the route. You could customize it per train, and that way every train's not stopping at every station along that particular route. We can clear all, because the only thing this train is going to service is that boxcar that goes to Hamilton Hardware. We're not using locomotives, but that doesn't matter. We could require a locomotive, but we're not going to. We also could require a caboose if we wanted the system to assign cabooses. Or we could mark a particular car as a Fred car, which has the flashing rear end device, if you're a modern modeler, and you could select that there. But we're not going to require anything. We could have some comments that show up on the cruise paperwork, like be safe, or be on the lookout for mudslides, or something like that. And we could also give it a short description on what it does. We can Frisco local. That way we remember that goes to Frisco. LFR 23 goes to Frisco. Save that. Close that. We're going to do another one. And we're going to call that the LFL for Flora local. Flora local 45. There it is. Add the train. Clear all. And this is the job that's going to handle the grain hopper and the flat car. It also is not going to require any kind of caboose or anything like that. We're going to give it some comments and just see what that looks like. We're going to say slow order. How about that? Slow order at milepost 245. Great. We're going to save train. Oh, forgot to add the route. It gets the route that goes to the west. There we go. We're going to save that train. And close that window. So now we have 2 trains, and we have a couple of industries, but what we don't have yet, let's go ahead and just always save everything, even if you don't think you need to. We don't have any cars that we have assigned. No cars. So we're going to add 2, and if you have a specific road name, let's say like Union Pacific. And down here, the reporting marks for Union Pacific is UP, right there. I like UP, so we'll have that. You could edit that. You could edit and say maybe you've got a freelance railroad, the Mount Vernon, Tamaroa, and Southern, and we could add that. And then now we've got that as a choice. We could go up here and we'll see that we've got the choice of MT&S. If you wanted to have a specific reporting mark, MT&S, and then whatever the road number is on that particular car, say 654, and it's going to be a boxcar. If it were a caboose or an EOT or a hazmat car or something like that, we would do that there. And it's a 40-foot boxcar. And currently, we're going to say we're going to start operating our railroad fresh right from the get-go. So it's in Argentine track 1. And sure, it's, I don't know, it's a brown boxcar. We could specify the simulated weight of it, but as we can see here, we've got that to do it automatically based on the car's length. But if you wanted the system to decide how many locomotives to put on the train, it needs to know how heavy the train's going to be. So there's that car. We're going to make a couple more cars here. While that window's open, we're going to make a UP car right up here. UP, we're going to say it's, I don't know, I'm just making this up, random. And it's a box car, and it's 40 feet. So we're going to add that car. Okay, let's do a couple more. Let's see, that's 2 box cars. Let's do 2 flat cars. TC. What reporting marks TC, guys? Leave it in the comments down below and tell me. That could be Texas Central, maybe? Toledo and Cincinnati? Who knows? I don't know. Make something up. There's a good. Let's see, that's going to be a flat car. Flat car. I don't know. We'll say it's 51 feet. Maybe it's a 50-foot car, and the system adds on a couple of feet for the coupler length. So we'll add that car. St. Louis Southwestern, Cotton Belt. That was a good railroad. It was close to where I grew up and rail fanned some. Let's see, random numbers there. And it's also a flat car. It's also 51 feet. All of these cars are starting out in Argentine Yard Track 1. Okay. Let's see. TMP, Texas and Pacific. So that's 2. Wait. Yeah, I've got 2 flat cars, 2 box cars. Now I'm going to say 2 hopper grain. Hopper grain. And again, you can edit what kind of car you have there. If maybe you don't like the way that's worded, you could add a different one or replace it to say something different. 3-bay, you could specify 3-bay hoppers, 4-bay hoppers, 2-bay hoppers, however you want to do it. Completely customizable. So it's a grain hopper. And it's 60 feet long, 60-foot long grain hopper. Add that car. And then the last one. And say, there, 2 grain cars. There we go, add car. So we determined, or we set it in the system that that yard track was 300 feet long. And now it's saying that we've exceeded the length of that track by 38 feet. And it's going to ask me if I want to force it there. Yes. Yes, I want to force it there. We'll come back to that in a second. Okay, save that. If we go back here to our locations, to Argentine Yard, make my window a little bit bigger there. We're going to edit that. And there's that. And it says the length is 300 feet. We've used 326 feet. So let's edit that. Let's make that a little bit longer. Let's say 400 feet. There. Super. Now we won't get that error message again. Save the location. So we have 3 different spurs that can be serviced by 2 different local trains. And let's go try and build one of these trains just to see what will happen. And then we can look at the switch list without actually printing it out. I'll show you that in a second. So we've got our 2 trains. We've got our Flora local and we've got our Frisco local. Let's build the Frisco local first. And if you look here in the status, it says it got 2 cars. 2 cars for the Frisco local. That's because it's going to take both of those box cars, I bet, to Hamilton Hardware. But we can look when we check box. Well, let's see right here the button says print. And if I click this, it'd give me the option to bring up the printer. But we can preview it and just see the PDF of it. And there's the PDF of it. It says right there. We're going to start out Argentine Yard. We're going to pick up the box car from track 1. We're going to pick up that box car from track 1. We're going to depart eastbound with 2 cars and 88 feet, 50 tons of train. When we get to Frisco, we're going to set out both of those cars to Hamilton Hardware. So we named that spur Hamilton Hardware. We could have named it anything, but it's Hamilton Hardware spur at Frisco. The town location is here. The spur or yard track or classification track at that location is here. That's two separate things on the how we describe where cars are going. So we could print that out and we'd have the paperwork. Now we've got several radio buttons here at the lower right hand corner. We've got move, which you can see right here. The action is move. Conductor. That's not something we're going to get into in this video, but you can interface this with a tablet or iPad, and instead of printing out the paperwork, you can actually use a tablet or iPad type device or your smartphone and interface it with JMRI as a server and use the conductor mode so they can actually do a lot of this from in the train room. But, terminate, when you've done the work and you know that the train has gotten back to its termination point, then you can terminate the job. And then if you decided, well, you know, that was a mistake, we're going to just reset that train, and then the cars are still where they're supposed to be in the computer system. So we're going to leave it at move. And if we move this, the current location now, what that did is it freed up whatever car spots were currently assigned to this train at the last station that it was at, which in this particular case, we only had the departure location. So those spots now are freed up for an incoming train to put their cars on that yard track. So this is the move button, makes that handy. If you have a clerk, somebody doing the clerk job on your operating sessions, they want to stay on top of that, keeping things moving so that the system can print out other switch lists for other people to run other trains. We can move it again, and now we've freed up the spots in Frisco that were currently assigned to this train, and then now we can terminate it because there's no more stops. Now we've terminated it. If we go to our cars window, we can see now that those two boxcars have their locations updated to Hamilton Hardware, which is at Frisco. The rest of those cars are at Argentine Yard yet, because those cars were only for industries that could be serviced by a westbound train, and that train hasn't left yet. But the eastbound industries got switched by that eastbound local. And it also tells you the number of moves. It does attempt, JMRI does attempt to not have cars stranded at a yard. So if this car has moved one move now, then the next time this train runs, if there's more boxcars in Argentine Yard, it will move those if those are a lower move count. So that's kind of handy, so you don't have just the same car moving back and forth all the time. So we've run our eastbound local train. Now what happens if we build and run our westbound local train? Now remember, Hamilton Hardware had the space for two boxcars, and it pulled the two boxcars that were in Argentine Yard and took them there. But our other spurs only have room for one car each. So look, we've got two cars, and I'm going to guess that when we preview this, it'll have the one flat car and the one grain car. So let's see what it says here. Sure enough, scheduled work at Argentine, we're going to pick up the grain car from track 1. We're going to pick up the flat car from track 1. When we get to Flora, we're going to set out the grain car at the grain elevator. Then we're going to set out the flat car to the transload. And because there's nothing that we had to pick up, we're going to return to Argentine with nothing. We depart Flora westbound with no cars because there was nothing at those spurs to pick up. This is a brand new layout. We're just starting. So the cars have not managed to get to the industries until today. So we can use the move, or we can go straight down to terminate, and we just go straight in to terminate that job. Because we're going to say that those cars have moved, that the crew did accurately set out those cars to those spurs. Now if we go into our car window, and we can see we've got those two box cars are at, in fact, we'll just sort, okay. Those two cars are at Frisco, because that train has not run again yet. Then we've got the two cars that are just got delivered at Flora, and then the other two cars are still at Argentine. So let's see what happens when we run that westbound train again. Let's build it again. And it says we've got 2 cars. And let's preview it and see what it says. So all we could do, and I'll explain why in a minute, all we could do is depart Argentine engine light. See how we don't have any work at Argentine. So we're going to go engine light to Flora. We're going to pick up the 2 cars that we did last time. And then we're going to bring them back to Argentine. Why didn't we take the cars with us that were still in Argentine to Flora, swap them out, and then bring back? Why? Well, I'll explain that in a minute. But first, let me show you what's going to happen the next time. So what did we do here? The Texas and Pacific and the Cotton Belt. Okay. So let's go ahead and terminate that train. We're going to say, yeah, we did it. Now there's nothing at those spurs. When we go to our cars window, nothing on those spurs. They're all 4 are back at Argentine. But look, the cars we've moved have 2 moves. One move was on their way out to Flora, and the other move was their way back to Argentine. The other 2 haven't moved yet. So if we build that again, let's preview it. This time we have the other 2 cars. The other 2 cars now, because they had a lower move count. So it was their turn to move. And if we go to our car window, let me move that first. Let's move it. Move, okay. And now it's updated. See, now they've made it to Flora, so they've gotten 1 move. Pretty cool, huh? So let's go into why they didn't, why the train didn't leave with the first 2 and do a swap in Flora. I mean, that's how a railroad would do it. If those cars were in the yard ready to go, they would take the loads to the industries or empties or whatever they might be. Well, we can do that in Tools, and I think it's in Options. And number of passes. So the normal build option just does 1 pass. The computer does 1 sweep of all the spurs that are available to see if in that first pass what is available to move. And the system can only do things 1 at a time. The spur already had a car in it in Flora, so it could not take anything from Argentine to Flora because the spurs were already filled to capacity. So if we change that to aggressive mode, then it's going to do multiple passes in the system. It's going to sweep those industries several different times in the computer to see how many moves it might take to get more cars moving. Now when I do this, if I save that, then we go back to this local again. We're going to build it. We're going to preview it. And now look, we're going to leave Argentine with the first 2. We're going to get to Flora. We're going to pick up the 2 cars we dropped off last time. We're going to send out the 2 that we brought out this time. And then we're going to bring the 2 that we picked up back with us back to the yard, which is exactly what we were wanting. As you add more locations and more spurs onto your layout, and you get the hang of assigning certain routes to certain stops and certain trains to certain types of cars, you'll find that your trains start moving cars pretty consistently. And then as you find things don't work out, maybe you've got a build error. Maybe the train can't get built because there's not enough spots at one of the stops along the way, or it's the wrong type of car is assigned to a particular route. With this checkbox right here, you can preview the build report. So here's our manifest. Let me minimize that. Right behind there is the build report. And the build report is kind of some computer techie language. It's hard to understand at first, but as you study these more, you'll start to see a pretty consistent pattern. It tells you how it decided which cars were going to be picked up from the yard, how they were assigned to the spurs that they ultimately got assigned to. Go up to the next page. And if there is a build failure for some reason, it would say right over here in the status, it would say build failure. You could see the build report, and it would explain train not built because location did not service this particular type of car. Something like that. When you try to do too much with the system, that's when you're going to get a lot of build failures. Too much too fast, especially if you're new at using JMRI operations. So my suggestion is start small. Even if you've got a large basement size layout with dozens of industries and 5 different yards, just start small. Start with 1 yard track, a couple of industries, maybe two different switching jobs. Slowly add the cars to it one at a time, and then see at what point, if you get build failures, what was causing that. Is it because you didn't assign a car to a train? Maybe the train length doesn't accommodate how many moves you've got it set up to do. And then the other thing is, if you're wanting specific cars to move in a specific order, JMRI is supposed to take kind of some of that responsibility from you. This is if you don't want a specific car to move in a specific way, a specific thing. You can do that. It's much more complicated in its programming, in the setup, using schedules and custom loads, which is way more in-depth than what I can do in this video. If you want simple, then doing it the way that I've just shown you is definitely something you want to explore with your layout. If you're wanting something a little more specific, then you'll have a lot more to learn as far as the schedules are concerned within JMRI. Assigning a specific train to a specific car rather than I just told it boxcar and it picked whatever boxcar was available. If you're wanting a very specific car to go in a specific industry, that takes a lot more programming. Maybe you want to consider a different way of operating your organizing your movements, such as car card and waybills or pre-printed switch lists. So that is JMRI operations. That's a pretty basic overview of how to get started in it. Once you have your switch list, you can either just, if you're not wanting to use a lot of paper and ink in your printer, you could always use a PDF printer, virtual printer on your laptop, and you could save this as a PDF and then save it to your tablet, your iPad, your smartphone. You send it to your conductors in a text message or an email or who knows what, and they could just use their phone to reference which cars they're picking up and which cars they're setting out. But if you don't mind the printer costs, you could definitely print that out on a piece of normal printer paper and have an ink pen and check in the check boxes there to ensure that the proper cars got picked up and set out. And you can even go as far as having a little JPEG image embedded into the corner of the switch list. If you are modeling a specific railroad or maybe a freelance railroad, you could have the image, the herald, put on there. And you can also, in the manifest options, change the color of the text in your switch list to be different colors for pickups or setouts. You could change the font if maybe there's a different text font that would be easier to have you read. You could change the text size. You could change what is printed on the manifest. If you want the color, if you want the length, if you want it, whether it's loaded or not loaded, or any of these different choices here, you could add and change those to your manifest print options. And that's pretty well it. If you guys got any other questions about JMRI operations, be sure and leave them down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. I am by no means an expert. I'm very happy with using JMRI on our UPSF joint line layout. If you haven't already, you could check out a couple of other of our operations videos on my YouTube channel. In fact, I'll go ahead and leave a couple of links in the description down below. You can check those out. And if you've decided to use JMRI operations on your layout, be sure and let me know. If you got any tips for any of my subscribers, leave them down in the comments, and for the benefit of other people reading through the comments. This has been Signal Up Productions, and thanks for joining me tonight. We'll see you on the next video.